Welcome back to Retro Rebound.
In today's video, we are going back to what we thought was the end of Sly Cooper. This is it, the end of the trilogy, or so we thought. Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves was made in a single year, and this is pretty impressive when you consider the game in that window. For me, however, Sly 3, you can just feel the 1-year development cycle all over this game. While it features some of the best missions in the series, it also sometimes is questionably written. It's oftentimes missing the themes and the character moments that really drive these missions and these interactions to whole other levels. It's missing a lot of the magic from Sly 2, and it honestly has less episodes than most of the games in the series, which makes sense. Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves is still, comparatively speaking to the rest of the games industry, a very fantastic video game and one of the best. But compared to the greatness this series reaches, I've always had issues with Sly 3. I don't have the Platinum Trophy for it yet. I don't love it nearly as much as other entries, and I avoid replays of this game like the plague, frankly. I don't like to go back to Sly 3 often. I'd rather go back to Sly 1, quite frankly. Do not confuse that with dislike, but when I go back to this series looking for what I love about it, I come here last, frankly. And I'm gonna break some of that down here in what is a much more different approach to our retrospectives, where we always celebrate games, and we're still celebrating Sly 3, but it'll probably be more critical than most videos on Sly 3 on the internet, I imagine. So yeah, enjoy that, right? This is the difference of thought in real time. Enjoy it. So to conclude my thoughts, there is no bad Sly game as far as I'm concerned, but I certainly have my preferences, and I think Sly 3 is absolutely the most flawed of the sequels, those being Sly 2, 3, and Thieves in Time. Where Honor Among Thieves is a story about learning what matters most to you in a world full of deception and material obsession, it doesn't really make that clear until its final moments, which does provide a good full circle moment. I mean, heck, the way the story opens up, it's practically inviting that in, and so mission accomplished in that regard. But I feel like Sly 2, they could have done a better job putting the themes in a more forward-facing area. I think villains in Sly 3 are a little bit weaker compared to the rest of the franchise. They don't have as much oomph or impact, and that's because a lot of where this story begins. Now, this also boils down to personal preference, not just in the taste of Sly Cooper games, but ways stories are told. The way Sly 3 is told is an opening that I really can't stand in any video game, movie, book, anything. I do not like when stories open up toward the end or somewhere in the middle. It just feels cheap to me. So you have a crew much larger than you're used to, assisting you in getting back into the Cooper Vault to claim what is yours. Now that's already suspicious because the second game ends with this crew splitting up, so I'm sure you can already see where I'm going with my issues here. That's not to say you're wrong if you do like this, but I just can't stand when a game opens up with where we'll be at the end of the game. It kills a lot of my suspense because so many end results just feel decided already. Like, I know this crew makes up in a major way after both their biggest victory and defeat without knowing why, and that kind of sucks. I also know that they're teaming up with some of the greatest villains like Dimitri and Panda King, who they try to hide by creating silhouettes for them when they're on the binocucom, but with the voice and the likeness, I mean, it's extremely obvious, and I don't think they're really trying to hide it too much, but I know the point of this narrative style is to hook the player or viewer with what they're gonna get, cut off at a part of uncertainty, like in this case, Sly is about to die, and then leave them with enough questions to then build your way back to that point. For those looking what this term is, it's called in medias res, and basically it's exactly that. You're beginning at a point that kind of skips the exposition, and then you fill that in throughout the rest of the story. So that's what provides that full circle feeling. You reach that endpoint, and that's really gratifying for some. But I personally find it to be like I'm just staving off narrative disinterest until I get to something that I'm unaware of, because I already know the end result here. And this may sound harsh, but coming off of Sly 2, where the story and characters really are elevated, the tension immediately feels gone here. And not in the traditional tension, like I'm watching Alien Romulus and I'm holding onto my chair. I'm just talking about tension of how are these characters going to get broken in a particular way, and how will they recover from it? And again, that's a lot of what Sly 2 is about. It's a game really about vengeance and cleaning up the trash, and Sly's closest friends pay the ultimate price for it. The initial plot point to kick off the story also doesn't serve as a great hook for me. Sly's goal is to access the Cooper Vault and collect his inheritance. Okay, it's a much less personal adventure compared to, getting revenge on Clockwork or killing off the Clockwork parts and burying his past. Like, it's a totally different level of stakes here. Like, you could live without this effectively. It almost feels a little off key for what he's learned in the last 2 games to be fixated on this. So, I mean, I'm sorry, but I've ran a million heists in Sly already. So for me, I'm not getting too into a story that's centered completely around the big heist. It just doesn't feel right to me. So Maddie, what do you like? For me, Venice, without a shadow of a doubt. Going to Venice in this game is beautiful, right? It makes you question all of your thoughts on this game because it's so good, so classic Sly Cooper. I mean, the music here even is Paris levels of good. It's just a track that is so synonymous with Sly Cooper for me that I always have this thing on. Just like the Paris theme, I'm always listening to the Italy theme. These are the two tracks I just have like glued to my brain anytime I think of Sly Cooper. So it's an important level for that. There's also a story element here, like what happened to Murray after he was so sad with what happened to Bentley. And you're seeing some bad coping skills here. He's like a shell of himself and he's detached himself from who he really once was to hide from that past in exchange for a more peaceful life guided by the guru. And now the dogs run the streets here in Venice thanks to Don Octavio, who's responsible for the city's tar epidemic, as he's also attempting to convince all of Italy that, opera's great and all that fun stuff. That means that Carmelita and the cops are waging war in said streets, and her mission is like a series highlight for me. Like, I'll always remember the first time I played as a kid as Carmelita Fox, because I always thought she was really cool, but it was this moment I went, oh man, like this series is bigger than Sly, Bentley, and Murray. This is a totally different playstyle. It's a third-person shooter. Like, I went through Bentley's awful helicopter missions in Sly 2 for this moment where it feels good. I'm jumping on buildings, I'm navigating the map so quickly, and you're getting that feeling of like in Sly 2 right in the beginning where Carmelita's just shooting at you and leaping across all the buildings. Like, those abilities translate so well into the actual gameplay. So I just loved playing as Carmelita Fox, and that's of course why I also love Sly Thieves in Time. Like, got to play as Carmelita Fox way more extensively. It was awesome. And the comedy is so good here. Like the ridiculousness of Murray, this guy who's known for just beating everyone up, doing street races, is now just completely at peace with himself. Sly's god-awful Italian accent, alto, alto, bass, bass. Just, I rip that line constantly, dude.
Alto, alto, bass, bass.
I love how the cops are getting their feelings hurt by the gang and it springs an all-out war. It's here again, it's just classic Sly Cooper. I mean, I don't like Murray's bouncy ball mission all that much, but even as a kid, I hated the canal mission, but I love that nowadays. It was just a skill issue because even to this day, I really need to focus up for it. Like, you're always just shooting, jumping, like you're back and forth on the controller. It's so fine-tuned. It's exactly what I wanted Sly to become at that point. Like, hey, we have a great template here with Sly, Murray, and Bentley. Let's see when we expand what those gameplay elements can be, what we get. And so Venice just represents a ton of that. It's just so wonderful. So the variety is strong here, and that's Sly 3's best quality, is the mission variety. You're always doing something a little bit different. It'll rely on its own templates, as I'll highlight, just like every Sly does, but I think this one manages to hide it really well. Now, the story diverts from the original goal after you're done in Venice to immediately now help out Murray, who just isn't into the old way of doing things. He's completely detached from the gang. And so off to the Australian outback you go. And visually, this is my least favorite Sly Cooper location of all time. This is where I say, like, this game is just so anti-replay for me at moments. You think of the hazard room, I think of this level, I think of another one in this game where I'm just like, I don't want to play this game. Like, of course, Sly's art style carries so much of the weight here in this franchise, but it's also the way it mixes the fantastical with the practical. It makes really cool locations that feel kind of believable for the setting of like animals just walking around and running the show here. Like, and so they do a good job of mixing that in while making it look really good. And here's just hills and dirt, and it makes sense for where you're at and what's happening in the story, but it's just inexcusably uninteresting to explore. And that's made worse by the fact that there are no clue bottles, no treasures. The exploration here is just kind of to get to the next mission. All of these hubs serve as mission spaces, and so you're just running from point A to point B each time, and there's no real distractions, in my opinion. And I always found that really disappointing. I love getting the clue bottles. Many people don't. They get that moment of thinking they're hearing the clue bottle just ticking when it's not actually ticking. Hey, guilty as charged, has happened to me, but I love hunting them down. It's like the first thing I do anytime I get into a hub. And especially with how big these maps are, there were plenty of places to hide them. There were abilities you could have unlocked to maybe help track them down. Like, there were ways to do this, and I feel like it was just a huge missed opportunity. So I feel like this mission in Australia just represents so much of a lot of the level design that I don't like in Sly 3, but also, again, just like how uninteresting this location is to look at. And even some of the missions aren't as great. Like, I enjoyed the bug stomper one where like your tires are going to overheat if you don't run over some of the bugs that are going to cool it off. Originally you had water there, but then the water gets drained, and so you have to really amp it up a bit and be a little more urgent. I like that sort of stuff. I think they did a good job with missions like that. But really, otherwise, I feel like throwing guards into electric fences was kind of a cool highlight, but nothing really feels great here except the fact that you have this mask of dark earth that attaches itself to Carmelita, so she gets frenzied. She's also enlarged. And the writing here is so cheeky. Like, we talk about great writing across all of the Sly franchise. And like, here Sly goes, we need to get the Carmelita back we know and love. And everyone's like, speak for yourself on like loving her, man. I mean, she's always chasing us down. You love her. And he's like, look, that's not the point, right? He's just urging like, hey, this is what matters. And when the idea is pitched, like, you got to climb up her, Sly's the only one who's like, that's a good idea. And Murray's like, well, maybe for you, maybe for you, dude. You can see Sly's almost like obsession with Carmelita that he's not acknowledging. Again, a very important part of this story, but it was so funny just to catch that there. I think they did a really good job writing this scene, but otherwise, like, very few highlights at this point in the story, frankly. It's like you're just going up and down, if you're at least in my shoes. So after this, you get your first new party member in the Guru, and that's a choice because I think there's characters like Carmelita, Dimitri, who've been long established characters that you would have been excited to have added to your party first, but you pick this character that like doesn't speak to you really, and he doesn't have like the most interesting gameplay element. And so I felt like that was a little bit of a disappointing choice, but things carry on after this to Bentley saying we need an RC expert. So introducing Penelope, which will become a character we'll discuss much more when we get to Sly Thieves in Time. Don't worry, we'll cover all of that. But looking at Penelope in Sly 3, she needs you to outdo the Black Baron because she apparently only works for the best. This is a girl with standards, right? And so there's a lot of great missions here. Again, you get to activate traps in the sewer using the face buttons. I love these sort of gimmicky missions. There's a lot of, if you will, face button QTE coded missions in Sly 3. Some great, some not so great. Like, this game is extremely dependent on like the little disguise system and then using the face buttons to like say certain sentences or certain patterns. And I get it. It's a little gimmicky. It's fine, but they lean on it really heavily. And so there are some missions that you can see them kind of reskinning it over and over. And again, you can just in those moments feel the 1-year development cycle a little bit more than other points where you're like in the canals of Venice and it feels a lot more fresh and different. Obviously, though, being a pilot is the highlight in the Black Baron chapter. Like, I absolutely love flying this thing around. It still feels good to this day. And it's also not the last time you see it, but it's definitely the standout moment here. Again, where Sly 3 is really flexing its gameplay creativity muscles. Like, the story may not be popping off, but you're always doing something a little bit different here. And you also even get to run over all these extra guards who are pilots in this competition with the Guru. And I just feel like this is the game you really take it to the flashlight guards. Like, they spend so long beating you up. They're so intimidating, so impossible to take down. And this is the game that you can just, even a Sly, like one-on-one them. And it's great. Like, I just love that you're constantly running these dudes over. It's fantastic. It's cathartic even. There's even a really cool part where you have to fight against Mugshot again. This is the first time you're seeing him since the first Sly game. And I thought this was a really cool touch. I completely forgot about it until I went back to the game. So yeah, suck it, One Piece. There's your long-term storytelling right there. Shout out to Carmelita Fox for arresting Mugshot once more. From there, you move to China to meet a former arch nemesis in Panda King, but he's only going to help you out if you free his daughter from Sao. Now, this is where you start to see a few more hybrid missions that I really appreciated. Like, you'll have Sly and the Guru working together where like the platforms will be floating in midair and they're just enemies' heads. But the Guru's doing that while he's on Sly's back. So it provides a really different platforming opportunity, or Murray brawling his way to a certain point and then Penelope and Bentley taking to the sky. Like, these are really cool. And this is where the massive amount of party members, if you will, really shines through. And I would love to have seen a lot more of this. There is a point by the finale that they do more of this, but man, it really feels like a star of the show kind of moment when they have these missions, and you see a lot of them here in China. Otherwise, I love that it's snowing here. Like, that's one of my favorite things about this level. I love snow in any game. Like, my favorite level in Halo Combat Evolved is Assault on the Control Room, because as a kid, and I still do to this day, love snow. And so when I see snow in a mission like that, I'm like, this is perfect. I love this so much. So yeah, China has a special place in my heart in Sly 3 because of just the snow falling. I'm like, I'm so cozy right now. Let's get into this. There's also the best boss fight here. I really love that, where you're jumping between the bamboo sticks, you're fighting one-on-one within the brush. Like, it's so cool. It's so epic in a weird way that you never really expect from this franchise. And then you get your hands on Panda King, who plays a lot differently from others. So he's gonna load up fireworks into his back and he's gonna launch them. And otherwise, outside of specific missions, I never really liked playing as Panda King all that much. So now with this, we kick the dirt off our feet. As you've noticed, I really haven't raved about a chapter since Venice, right? Well, it's time for the best chapter in the game and one of the best environments in Sly Cooper ever. And that's where we're now becoming pirates. This is where the trash talking makes sense. I love the trash talking in this game. It's so it's so good at this point because I absolutely adore how they use the trash talking here, right? There's so many points in the game where, you know, like Bentley has to trash talk one of the Baron's goons to kind of like lure him into a fight. Okay, but like when it's Sly just smack talking another pirate, and you have to like do certain choices and his face is changing each time, like he's kind of panicking on what he should say. It's that level of cheeky comedic writing that you find here, that you find in Sly's Italian accent. I love how they play with Sly in this game on a comedic level. It's so great, and this is absolutely the highlight for me. Anytime I think of Sly 3, I think of this chapter instantly. Plus, you have the goat, or should I say the iguana, in Dimitri. He's here, and this man's got scuba diving missions, and I just love the first person view in this game with Dimitri because you just see the shiny, fat diamond ring on his hand. Like, this guy's stylish, even underwater, fighting against sharks. It's so sick. I love Dimitri so much as a character. Obviously, I have so much love for the Paris level in Sly 2, but to have Dimitri here styling out, I would have loved to have him introduced in the game sooner because really you get here and then it's the end of the game. And that's the other thing is I felt so shortchanged by Sly 3. I'm like, yes, let's go, Dimitri, like whole squad's here. At this point, you get a pirate ship, you get to really open things up. Like I'm so excited about what's to come. And then the game ends. Like that's again, you feel the 1 year development cycle all over it. It's so heartbreaking. And you even fight off like a sea monster as Panda King. There's just a ton of cool missions here. There's a lot going on. I absolutely adore this chapter from top to bottom. I have like nothing critical to say about it other than it feels like it ends too soon, and I would have loved to have more time with this cast at this point. Like one more chapter probably would have done well, but short development time means it's wrap up time. And now we're at the end with the big heist. I will say for all of my bitching and moaning in this video, I do think that Sly 3 has one of the best finales, just not narratively. I'm talking about gameplay execution. You don't really feel a complete evolution in the mechanics of where you start and where you end in the past two Sly games, right? So when I'm going ahead and navigating the blimp in Sly 2, I don't feel like I'm playing differently or doing wildly different missions. Like I'm still doing reconnaissance missions. Like this is still a key part of the game. It still functions largely the same. But here with the Cooper Vault, everyone's playing a part, doing something different. I think the RC missions are such a standout here. I love the RC missions in general, but they really shine here. Like there's a good level of variety and it feels good because it's not just gameplay, but like everyone has been recruited and is now pitching in to get into the Cooper Vault. So I just love how they stuck the landing in terms of gameplay variety here and truly feeling that evolution because it's not really present across the entirety of the series otherwise. I almost forgot though, Dr. M exists, not really the best villain honestly the worst villain in the series, but everyone has their moment to pitch in, so that's good. And it wraps up with what I would call a bittersweet ending again, just not on the level of Sly 2. Sly, quote, loses his memory, the Cooper Vault is totally destroyed, or so we think, but Sly actually left the treasure from the vault for his friends. And he kind of does this in a way that I think gives the game a good message in its dying moments, which is Sly is staring death in the face and he realizes what's important to him. He's been chasing treasure and vengeance this whole entire arc, and he realizes what matters to him is Carmelita Fox, and he's ready to leave it all behind. Like that foolishness I felt at the beginning of the game felt a little justified because maybe it was by intent. Like Sly going on this big heist just kind of reeks of greed. Like, why do you need your inheritance, dude? And so it's there in that moment. He learns this is what matters to me. And I think he sees that in things like he mentions Bentley and Penelope. They get along really well. He sees the love there and he wants something like that for himself. And he feels like he's missing out. Like he sees Murray and Guru's relationship and just like how they've bonded. And he doesn't really have that. He's just bonded with his material obsession. So it does give the game a good message to leave off on. And it is a little bit of a cliffhanger that stinks because at the time you play it and you're like, oh, Bentley's making a time machine. Okay, what's next? And then Sanzaru steps in with Sly Thieves in Time. So yeah, Sly 3 has a great cast of characters. I don't think utilized to their full potential. There is some great mission variety though, which is enabled by said cast of characters. Oh, don't forget, they have 3D glasses. How about that? Yeah, check that out. So you could play some missions in 3D. You just remove these pieces of the template here and connect the glasses. As you can see, I never did that. Screw 3D. How about that, pal? But Otherwise, this is a game that I love in certain ways because I love Sly, but not because I love the game in full. I want to love Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves more than I do. It's still a great game compared to most of what the industry has offered me in my lifetime. But for the heights that Sly 3 reaches, I do think they could have done better. But in the allotted time at the same point, I think it is very impressive that they pulled it off at all. And they pulled off a story that had as many different gameplay elements jammed into it as they could. I mean, to make that in a year is very impressive. So, ladies and gentlemen, I leave you with my thoughts on Sly 3. Very critical look at it, but still, I think one that was needed. So what do you think of Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves? Are there things that you like that I didn't like as much? Fire away down below. Other than that, I'll catch you in the next Retro Rebound. Peace out.